Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Vectra AI podcast, where we in the Vectra product team talk about the stuff we hear, what we learn, what we are working on, and occasionally rant on the topic we are passionate about. My name is Tiffany Nip, and I'm a product marketer on the product team. Today, I'm joined by John Mancini, our principal product manager. Today's topic is a threat briefing on the current state of phishing, where John will walk us through what we are seeing in the wild, how attackers utilize these technology to execute their attacks, and how to best defend against them. With that, I'll hand over to John.
Awesome. Thanks, Tiff. So I'll jump right in with kind of a quick history lesson. I think before we talk about where phishing is today, it's useful to just look at the trajectory phishing has been on. So phishing is the first instance of a recorded phishing attack came back in 1996. And the way that phishing attack, this was executed against AOL. So we're talking instant messenger, talking CD disk floating around there. It was executed using a phishing kit, using this program called AOL, which had all kinds of bells and whistles that let a attacker essentially compromise another user's account. It let them do everything that they could want in the AOL space, including having an AI agent that allowed them to automatically reply to messages however they wanted. Ultimately, the goal here was to steal kind of a user's accounts. You can call this a script kiddie era of hacking. But ultimately, like all kinds of arcs here, it was stopped eventually by AOL when they kind of stopped the users being able to randomly create new accounts in AOL, which was where they were driving these attacks from. Really script kiddie stuff, so not a lot of dollar impact. The first big dollar impact we saw as it related to phishing came in around 2001. So actually in 1996, there was this company that started to come on the market called eGold. It was digital currency before cryptocurrency was a thing. And so essentially, it was a means with which you can transfer kind of aspects of gold digitally. And it was a one-way street. So once the eGold concept was transferred, a dollar value was transferred, there was no return value. So this meant that an attacker who gained access to an account could transfer eGold from the user's wallet to another wallet and siphon that money out. So huge opportunity from an attacker when there's no reversibility towards the dollar transfers. And so at its peak in 2001, attackers were running this as a kind of a common vector where thousands of dollars were being lost per day. Ultimately, this was stopped kind of in a very primitive MFA fashion when basically this eGold company put in a pin challenge for any new IP. So new IP showed up. If it was the attacker, they'd have to put in a pin basically to kind of cover it. We've moved a lot in terms of time from the kind of 1990 era to today, but some of the core things are the same. And so I'll kind of now jump forward in time to walk through. Where is phishing today? Phishing today is the number 2 most common means of initial access. I personally think this is a little bit of a juke stat because the number 1 method of initial access today is credentials. And ultimately, in the modern era of initial access brokers, phishing is being used to both drop payloads and gain credentials that maybe are used in a future date. So kind of the 1 and 2 are intimately intertwined. And on that point, there really is, when we talk about phishing, these 2 objectives. So an attacker is either looking to drop a payload onto an endpoint that would then spit up a C2 or some sort of local infection point on a machine, or capture credentials with which the attacker can then run an end-to-end attack purely based off of identity. Where we are at today in terms of any of these technologies is the same place really we were in 1996 with a lot more bells and whistles. Phishing kits are how any of these attacks are run today. What you're looking at here is kind of a level set of what a phishing kit looks like. These are all open source for representation. So GoPhish, Zphisher, these are tools that some people in the security community may already be using in their operations to mimic attacks to test their own end users. And they're designed ultimately to be easy and basically make the execution of an attack a few click process. So they have custom templates, they have custom land pages, they have kind of a catalog of landing pages and templates too. So you can easily mimic any of the top websites for credential theft. You can mimic kind of really convincing emails that get sent out, track campaigns. So who's been email sent, whose emails have been opened, capture passwords, a whole lot of functionality. These are kind of the level set though, because phishing kits as a whole have evolved to be really, really effective means for attackers. So much so that we're seeing actually a trajectory of attackers moving away from ransomware in the past few years to focus solely on kind of driving email-based attacks because they lead to so many more other opportunities. And really the kind of driving force for some of this is this concept of phishing as a service. And so I'm going to use one of these phishing as a service groups as an example here. But ultimately, what this is the fact that attackers want to have specialized tools to run their attacks. And phishing as a functionality, when you invest in it, can be incredibly effective at running an attack. So what we're finding is kits being put out there in the market with the ability to do reverse proxies, with automated setup, with the ability to evade detection from other tools, to be fully managed over a remote kind of text, cell phone-based device in terms of execution, without having to have sophistication from the attacker themselves on how to run a explicit attack. And so this kind of specific example from Storm 111 that I've got up here, you can see this is a tool that basically actually started out as open source, but they started adding this premium functionality, first licensing it for $100, then eventually upgrading that license to $300, then eventually $1,000 for this premium-based license, because of the value ultimately they were providing to the attacker landscape in terms of being able to run an attack end to end. Let's zoom in a little bit here because I think it's useful to see what these kits are, because from a defender's perspective, I think this is really important. So a phishing kit, when it gets run, starts from an end user just like anything else. You'll see kind of a, hey, download this file. Hey, you've got this thing to log into, take a look. And from there, the actual click will result in a href redirect to check to see, okay, should I just dump out? Is there some sort of defender tool in place so that I can just cut my losses and escape here? So that's one path that the tool might take. The other path, though, is to go and do a CAPTCHA prompt. This is where that kind of phishing as a service dollar value cost comes into play, because CAPTCHA costs the attacker money to run, but ultimately give an allure of kind of realism, of legitimacy here. And so the CAPTCHA prompts, user fills in the CAPTCHA, and then they're brought to a sign-in page that looks, feels, seems, acts just like you would expect a normal sign-in page to. However, it is actually the attacker's landing page that you're looking at. And so this is where kind of some of the kind of crazy stuff gets involved here. So at this point, user is going to type in their password into that new website that they see there, and that password is going to get proxied to the actual website. So if it's Microsoft, to the actual M365 portal. From there, there's going to be a return message from the target website of an MFA prompt. So be either put in your number, do XYZ, all these different things that kind of come with this. That's going to hit the phishing site and be proxied then back to the end user. The user then is going to input that MFA prompt. They're going to put that credential in. The attacker is going to capture that in the middle and pass that on then ultimately to the target website. By passing it into the target website, they've essentially can capture the cookie, the means with which to actually execute any operation within that signed in environment. And then from there, they're able to run a full end attack. And the end user, they may get bumped out, dumped off to a kind of a, hey, there was an error message and you didn't sign in, and they'll be none the wiser and kind of go about their day. But ultimately, their account has been fully compromised at this point. MFA is fully bypassable. The attacker can run a attack without any sort of prevention getting in their way at this point. These kits are really highly active right now. So I've walked through one example here in kind of some depth. There's Greatness as well. Evil Proxy has had a lot of attention in the past year. There's other ones that are coming out on the market here in terms of dark web marketplaces, kind of, it seems, on a every few month basis here. What you're looking at in the background actually is the kind of onboarding guides that have been published by Evil Proxy. And the comment I would emphasize looking at this is it's a good looking tool that really is something that looks easy to use. And this is how Evil Proxy, at least, has been tracked as having about 1 million attempts a month to have users exploited by a phishing kit like this. So the effects here, are pretty large in terms of the scale of the attacks that are attempting to happen, and then ultimately the success in them. Because if you're able to capture that token, bypass MFA, and if you're not prepared for what happens when your prevention fails, these attackers can get really far and really capitalize on kind of their position here in terms of technology. The technology piece is important here because ultimately AI has a role kind of more than anywhere else in this phishing game. And so large language models are, essentially this chat GPT, there's, all the different big organizations, big tech company have new versions out there, but chat GPT, you can use it without even a login credential. And ultimately what it's going to give is the ability to remove any sort of issues that were originally related to language that were giveaways in these phishing websites. It's no longer, hey, look for misspellings in the email, because things like this just remove the option of a misspelling, a mistranslation, anything. And so more compelling messages are ultimately being created in these phishing attacks thanks to AI. On the edges here, though, there's even more advanced attacks that are happening that are being driven by AI. So what you're looking here is a clip that I borrowed from the New York Times here that relates to fakes. So essentially using these generative AI tools to swap out faces from one person to another. In 2023, we saw kind of the first instance of a real attack happening where the attackers seemingly mimic the face of a CFO in an organization, had that fake CFO talking to an employee saying, you need to reroute $25 million. And because of the realism of the voice, the video, all these things, they were able to convince this kind of person within the organization to reroute that money and steal it. All really coming from this very powerful technology position that the attackers were running from. From Vectra's perspective, this is an area where we see huge value from our threat detection kind of product, because ultimately Vectra is able to see everything that the attacker does once they get past those kind of initial sign-in event pieces. So once MFA is bypassed, if you don't have the right detection signal, you're going to be blind to what the attacker does, and you'll not be able to stop them. And so what you're looking at here is an example attack where essentially one of these phishing kits was used. Vectra detects the sign-in events, and then all the things that happen afterwards, because ultimately no attack is just a single sign-in. The attacker has to do something else, and Vectra's built the depth of coverage in order to find the attacker wherever they are. So really exciting, in terms of kind of the opportunity to help here that we've seen. And so definitely something, if you're kind of interested in how to evade kind of the damage from these types of phishing attacks, threat detection is absolutely the path forward.
Great. Thanks for the content, John. And as we've been able to see how this phishing kits and phishing as a service become more professional and even more real, landing page looks exactly like the same as the real one, grammar mistakes minimalized. And as you mentioned, phishing is a technology game as well, and it will just continue to evolve. Just quick question on whether you have any advice for our viewers to best defend against these attacks.
So definitely the level set is still MFA. I'll always say MFA is great. Conditional access policies can be even better. But ultimately, as attackers continue to innovate and we continue to see shifts, both from, this is just one example of how attackers bypass, preventative measures like MFA. It is having the visibility for what happens next as part of their security operations. So threat detection is absolutely critical in the face of these types of attacks.
Yeah, great. Thanks again, John, for the great session. If you want to learn more about how Vectra AI can stop an identity attacks or how we can help, feel free to check out our website, vectra.ai. And once again, thanks everyone for joining us today. See you in the next episode.